Hey guys, this is gonna be my review of the fourth episode of the first season of Star Trek Picard, the Amazon Prime spin-off show, and this episode is called Absolute Candor. So, I think this is my least favourite episode so far, quite easily actually. I really enjoyed the first three all to a certain extent, but very good. The first three, I guess, served as almost like a three-part pilot, if you like, setting up the mission and the backstory. And I've been really impressed with the show so far. It's not to say this one is a total stinker. I mean, it's not a stinker. That would be over the top, but it's easily my least favourite so far, and there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, the politics of it, which I'll talk about in a moment. I think that is very heavy-handed in this episode, very much on the nose. You do get a couple of scenes in particular where you get some really preachy speeches from Picard that, yeah, they just go a bit too far. It's a bit too like standing over you, telling you what to think a bit. Yeah, it doesn't let the drama or the metaphor work for itself, essentially. Also, the narrative plot, which I'll talk about, is moving extremely slow and isn't doing much for me so far, particularly because he is a pretty flat character, kind of just this very middle of the road, very bland. So far, not a lot invested in him as a character. And I think also it just feels like a bit of a stopgap episode. It feels like, okay, we set up the mission in the last episode, they're now on the way to this planet, but now we take a decoy mission, we take a stop off at this other planet. So there is a sense of it. They've set up the mission, and now, kind of just to space the season out a bit, you sort of have to have this sort of decoy mission. And it is relevant to Picard's history and his backstory, so it's not totally out of left field or anything. And like I said, it's not really a terrible episode, but it didn't do too much for me, I have to say, overall. So we get another flashback at the beginning, and the flashback shows Picard when he was still captain of Starfleet, or when he was still captain and part of Starfleet, visiting this really poor, impoverished planet. And we see that he struck up a close bond with this orphan who had been taken in at a nunnery, and Elroy, the character's name is, or Alnon. I'll go with Alnon. So we see Alnon as a boy, and that he'd been taken in at this nunnery, and Picard and him had sort of formed an attachment. And it's already in this scene that we get sort of a speech from Picard, this kind of, once again, preaching almost to the converted, but this very sort of heavy-handed liberal-like speech about, like, it doesn't obviously say immigrants in the scene, because that wouldn't make a lot of sense actually using the word immigrants, but he's basically like preaching about the rights of others and how we must stand up and protect them. And it is very on the nose, I have to say, a little bit jarring. But at the end of the scene, we see Picard called back up, and so he's been fencing with Elroy Alnan, and he's like called back to the Starfleet, the starship. Sorry, I'm tumbling over my words here. And it's like da da da. Oh, they look, because the woman he knows at the nunnery, the nun, she's very supportive of him, and she's trying to like drill into Alnan that you know he has his duties. He can't be around all the time. He's out there fighting the good fight, and there are other planets struggling. It's not just ours. And obviously, Alnan, as a young boy, doesn't quite understand this. He feels kind of hurt when Picard leaves, but it just shows you him leaving, and it maybe hits that beat a bit too hard. It's just like, oh, he's abandoning them, which has become a running thing because of Picard leaving Starfleet, and because of, well, whether through choice or for whatever reason, he has for a certain period left his old life behind and has been sort of sequestered on his chateau. I mean, that's part of the tension between him and Raffi. So it's another example of him leaving people behind, and those people seem sort of feeling betrayed. So that's the setup, and that's kind of a warning for things to come in the episode. We get a little bit more on the ship just with the crew. So the Alison Pill doctor, she has a couple of nice scenes actually. I sort of like her interaction with Ramos, the pilot, sorry, where he's just trying to read this book, and she's like boring him to death with all these science facts, and she's sort of talking about who knew space could be so lonely and boring, sort of thing. And he's trying to just ignore her, and occasionally replies quite sort of sarcastically. But probably the line of the episode, certainly of that scene, is when she's talking about the lack of DVDs to watch on board, and she says the only one they've got is like Klingon opera, which is fantastic. I love that. And Alison Pill is great in that scene. Her sort of deadpan delivery is just fantastic. So great stuff. She's really settling into that character. And I like that Picard has like a hologram on the ship. There's like a hologram room which recreates actually his home experience, his chateau and what have you. But it also reminds him about the planet he left behind with the orphan many years ago. And again, he has that nostalgia. He has that hunger to fix what was left. You know, not sort of complete. So again, it's planting these seeds to do with holograms and this idea of just reproducing life. But can it ever be the complete real life? Is you know, it's that idea of any time you produce a copy of something, it's never legitimate because it is a copy of an original. And also, is it healthy to use technology in such a way? Is it healthy to use it for nostalgia and to keep bringing these things up when it's sometimes more healthy just to move forward with your life? So I did like there's a couple of strong scenes on the ship at the start. But Picard basically says then he wants to take this detour. He wants to go back to this planet and revisit them. And that's when Raffi informs him, well, it's under Romulan control now. So again, it brings up like the politics and the sub-theme of like immigration and migrants. Because when he gets to the planet, he sees that there's a segregation sign. Essentially, Romulans not allowed, non-Romanans not allowed past this point. So he's warned by Raffi, then this is not a good idea. You're really risking your life here. But Picard is determined to go anyway, and so they beam him down. And his plan is to actually get the nun out of there, because feels as a non-Romulan she's under threat. And also at this point he doesn't know about Alrun not still being there, which he finds out later. So he beams down, he goes to the nunnery. And he reconnects with her. I forget the character's name, but the nun character. And then he discovers that Alman's still there, as he's now obviously a teenager, and he's a little older than, but young adult roughly. And that Alman has been training to be a ninja, and Picard, or a warrior of some kind. Picard is disappointed because he just assumed Alman would have left the planet and found a new life for himself and a better career. And they both say actually then that if he stays here, he's probably going to die, because he's not on the Roman side, but chances are he's been trained, he's been training, and he's obviously gonna oppose them, gonna get into a fight with them, so that ultimately will probably lead to his death. So Picard is concerned, and he has a word with Alman. And again, Alnor. I think it's Alnor. It's like Elnor. I'll go with that. Alnor. That sounds right. Alnor. Is really pissed with Picard. And again, this is where maybe some of this stuff is getting a little bit repetitive, because we've had the stuff to do with people who are pissed with Picard because of feeling abandoned by him from the past. We've had Raffi feeling that. There's at least been a couple of other examples. Now we have this example with Alnor, and he's giving Picard the cold shoulder, just doesn't want to talk to him because Picard never went to visit the planet again after he stepped down from Starfleet, and they haven't heard from him in 14 years, whatever it's been. But because Picard is worried about him staying on the planet, because I guess with the nuns and that, they know to keep their heads down and they wouldn't get involved in anything dangerous, but Alnor's likely to get into a fight with the Romans. So Picard tells him about their whole mission and to do with the twins. And tries to recruit him, says we could really do with someone with your fighting skills for this. And I mean, secretly he's just using it as a way to get him away from the planet. But Alnor takes offence at this, because he's like, oh well, when it's convenient for you and when you want me to help you, then you want me now. But before you just desert. So it's this whole thing. He gets really upset with him and storms off. And again, it's kind of a little bit repetitive, I think. Now later on, Picard gets in almost into a full-on like sword fight with one of the soldiers, like controlling the planet, because he's another one. And again, this is repetitive a bit because he brings up the past. Oh, don't you remember me, Picard? And he basically says then, because Starfleet were supposed to be saving refugees, they were supposed to be beaming up these people who were in poverty on this planet. And Picard kind of makes an excuse, and which is sort of valid. He says, well, there was a lot of planet with a lot of like poverty, and probably too many to take all of them. We could only take so many. And again, this is digging into like the real life politics when you think about recently, like different countries taking a certain quota of like immigrants, refugees, and there being some criticism over some maybe not taking as many as they could. I think it's definitely digging into that real life politics. But Picard kind of apologises, says, but there was just too many for us to take it all. And the guy doesn't accept this excuse, this answer. He gets really aggressive and challenged Picard to a duel, and at first it looks like Picard has no choice but to go ahead with the duel. But then the twist is then Alnan comes along, and basically it's actually, although what leads up to it isn't that great, I do actually like the little effect where Alnan takes this guy's head off clean. It's a nicely shot moment because it just comes out of nowhere, and the effect looks good with his head just going clean off, and the kind of gunge from inside him. So that's a good little moment. But that kind of makes things worse because then there's a whole group of them, and they sort of come towards them, and that's when Picard, he has no choice but to beam Alnan's up. So he beams him up, and Alnan's on board, and so it kind of ends up that he's going to be part of the mission because of what's happened now. And then they get pursued by another spacecraft with these drones on, just shooting at them. This is where things get a little bit generic with this scene, because the action scenes so far in the show have been played very well, and they've used them very well. There hasn't been that many which have made them stand out, but also they've been good action scenes. This one to me did look a bit generic. But anyway, the surprise at the end is that they're trying to beam up someone from like the past to sort of help them, and out of nowhere lands Jenny Ryan's character, the 7 of 9, the Borg character from, Next Generation, and also originally from Voyager. She's beamed up, and Picard's surprised to see her. So that's kind of the twist at the end. So we're starting to get like the sprinkling of like the older characters from Next Gen. I know at some point Jonathan Frakes is meant to be popping up. We've already seen a cameo from Brent Spiner as Data, and now we have 7 of 9, the Jenny Ryan character. So nice little surprise during the episode. And I'll just quickly cover the Narek stuff because it's not really that interesting. So Sergio is like watching over the body of this survivor from last week, the one she interviewed, and the one who tried to kill herself. And she gets a little more information by reading her thoughts from the past, reading her like data and internal information. And then we get Narek pop up once again, trying to get close to her, trying to sort of weed a little information out from her, because of course he's trying to find out the location of her sister. That's what he's been planted for. And he again is trying to get close to her. He takes her to this place, and there's some clunky dialogue again from Narek. I think Treadaway's a perfectly fine actor. It's just this character just doesn't have a lot of life to him, and so far this plot with Sojo just hasn't clicked into life. They kind of slide along at one point on this particular floor, and it's just like meant to be this romantic sort of scene, and some really bad lines, some really clunky lines, and again he's just trying to get these little bits of information, but it's a very slow moving plot, and so far not too interesting, certainly not when Narek's on the screen. And then later on in the episode, Rizzo, who we found out was his sister, the Lieutenant Rizzo, comes along and again applies more pressure, and she gets really physical. Now her concern is that Narek is getting too close to Sojo, and that he is actually starting to fall for her and have feelings. It's not just that it's all part of the act for the purposes of the mission. And he defends this. He claims no, that's not true. It's just then to take out all of these androids. I need to get this information from her. And as I said, Rizzo, who's a character I'm quite liking so far, she gets really physical. She grabs onto him, chokes him, and just reinforces. She gets him to say what Sojo is essentially. And then before she leaves, she gives him one more week. And if you don't get the location by the next week, then action will be taken. So hopefully that might means that we can move this plot along and do something a bit different next week. Things might come to a head. But there you have it. That's Star Trek Picard Episode 4, which in my opinion was the weakest so far, but you might disagree. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like and subscribe if you are a new viewer to the channel, and I will be back with episode 5 of Picard about this time next week, maybe a bit earlier hopefully. But thanks for watching. See you guys later. Bye.